law, domestic and foreign policy, and this status continues to this very day. Court and phase 2 of the Holy Land trial, it never happened. Not only are they merely functioning, domestic and foreign relationship with my own government and my own agency, because I had the audacity to have targeted those individuals and those relationship with my own government and my own domestic and foreign policy, and this status continues to this very day. And that is one of the reasons why I ended up in such an overtly adversarial relationship with my own government and my own agency, because I had the audacity to have targeted those individuals and those organizations and put that information into the law enforcement system. That brought the U.S. government to a crisis. And that crisis is what? What are we going to do with the law enforcement information that's in the system? We call it derogatory information if we're trying to bring the leaders of these groups into a relationship with the government. You have two choices. Act on it from a law enforcement perspective and carry forward, or ignore it. But even ignoring it is simply a passive response. They didn't stop there. They became deliberate and intentional. And in 2009, what I call the first great purge, they ordered me to remove the linking information from all 850 records that I'd put into the system. Right exactly at the time when I was watching the C-SPAN hearings with the committees in Congress and expressing their concerns about the underwear bomber. And their two concerns were that failure to connect the dots and the radicalization of U.S. citizens and or lawful permanent residents. Exactly what we saw in Orlando, and in San Bernardino, and in Chattanooga, and in Fort Hood, and in Boston. The very same thing that the Congress expressed so clearly they were concerned about is exactly what happened. Radicalization of U.S. citizens and or lawful permanent residents. We call them green card holders. That was the first great purge in 2009. They ordered me to modify, that was the word, it's a euphemism. And how many people here have been pulled over by a state trooper? He walks up to you and he says, I'm going to give you a ticket. But I'm not going to tell you why. I just pulled you over and I'm going to give you a ticket. You got to pay the fine. It's $100. But I'm not going to tell you why. That's not acceptable, is it? Well, in my case, when I put those records into the system, but there was no explanatory reason for why those records were in the system, my colleagues have no reason or no understanding of why I put the records in there in the first place. So they're going blind. Comes 2/11, what we call the second great purge. This is when you start to hear in the news people like Stephen Coughlin and Matthew Dooley and John Guandolo and Bill Gothrop, one or two special subject matter experts from each one of the major federal government law enforcement oriented agencies. They came after us first. They started from a top-down approach. They knocked off all the subject matter experts in each one of the agencies, and then they went forward with the next steps of their program, which eventually morphed into what we call countering violent extremism.